ENCOR Section 25 Summary Challenge. Secure access control. What is the role of the router or switch in the AAA architecture? Is it authentication server, supplicant, NAS, or radius entry point? Okay, so router or switch, or could even be, I think, an access point, sits in between of the user device and the authentication server. So authentication server has user database, right? And it can check whatever credentials has been provided to it against this authentication, against this user database, and confirm the successful authentication, right? Client on the other side, on the very far end, requests this authentication, providing the credentials, and in the middle there is this router or switch, and its role is described as network access server, right? NAS here, specifically in this context, stands for network access server. Client here is supplicant. Authentication server is the authentication server running radius protocol, for example. And radius entry point is something not relevant. Which of these is a TechX message sent from the AAA client to the AAA server? Okay, in this scenario, we have the supplicant talking with the AAA server and the NAS serving as a middleman, right? Or actually, more specifically, it could be, yeah, it could be like TechX specifically is between the network access server and the authentication server. And as far as I recall, this conversation starts with the starts message, right? First step is the start message sent to the TechX server. TechX server responds back with a challenge, saying something like, hey, what's your username? Then the other side, the NAS, replies with another message type called continue, providing the username. And then the next challenge comes back from the TechX server, like, what's your password? Right? And then another continue goes back with the password provided. And then finally, there is confirmation or rejection of the authentication. That's as much as I recall the process. Which AAA function does not depend on the other two functions? Authentication, authorization, accounting, or maybe all functions depend on each other. One function which does not depend on other two is authentication. Authentication can be done by itself, right? Technically as well as logically. So there's the protocols and processes which can do authentication without any need for authorization or accounting. We just make sure a person or user or system we are talking to is what they claim to be, right? And this is authentication. And yeah, typically authorization and accounting come later on. And the other way around, authorization and accounting cannot be done by themselves without authentication. So these two, they actually depend on authentication. Which device typically serves as a network access server? Okay, I think this is getting back to the first question. We have this system of supplicant, and then network access server in the middle, and then finally the authentication server, which has the user database. Now, what can be this network access server in the middle? Can it be a router? Yes. Can it be a switch? Definitely. Can it be a firewall? Why not? It can be a firewall too. Access point, and I think I've mentioned this already, it can be access point as well. So I guess this applies, all of the above, right? All of these devices can actually implement some sort of security protocol, right? Like Radius or TechX. So all of the above. Which command should be used to configure a VTY line to use the AAA servers authentication method list. Oh, okay. So this is the name of the authentication method list, inconveniently spelled in small letters, but yeah, typically would be capitals. But okay, AAA servers. Line to use. Okay, so this one, right? We need to first command we need to do is not shown here. It's a line VTY from 0 to, let's say, 4 or whatever number of lines we are configuring. And then the command is a login authentication AAA servers. Yep, so I think that's what it is. A radius server is located at IP address such which command configures a Cisco router to find this server. Okay, this is for the radius configuration. So we only have one command to choose out of the options. But actually, to configure a radius server, at least 3 commands need to be input. First command is you specify the name of the server, then you specify the address, and then you specify the key, the authentication key for the radius protocol itself. So, and as this is just about the addresses, that means that just one proper syntax needs to be chosen, and this proper syntax is this one. So to indicate the address of the radius server, while already being in the radius server configuration mode, we need to use command address, then IPv4, another option would be IPv6, and then provide the address. If a user needs to be in privileged exec or enable mode, which part of AAA must succeed? So if a user needs to be in privileged exec or enable mode. Okay, so which part? Obviously, authentication must succeed. Everything starts with authentication, right? However, in order to authorize user to access enable mode, because enable mode is kind of a resource and it requires not just understanding who, like making sure user is who they claim they claim to be. It also requires authorization, right? So this user is authorized to access the enable mode. So I think this is authorization, right? Okay, that sounds good to me. Which benefit of AAA is best described by the ability to track outdated user credentials across multiple network devices? Okay, which benefit of AAA? Ability to track outdated user credentials across multiple network devices. Okay, that's something I'm not really sure what properly. Is it flexibility? No, don't see it applies. Standardization? Maybe, because outdated credentials may not comply with the security policy we have, and security policy is kind of standard. Redundancy? Doesn't look like redundancy. Or scalability. Maybe it is scalability, because the question asks about multiple network devices. So we can track, with scalability, we have this added benefit of being able to absorb many different things and apply policies at scale of our network. However, it's best described. Okay, I'm not really sure about this question. I think I will have to go with scalability and see if it's correct answer later on. What are the 3 types of authentication options available in networks today? Okay, there are credentials. It is something you know, as they say, right? It is something you know, your username and password, for example. Another one is certificates. This is something you have. I mean, logically, there is no huge difference, but organizationally, there is, right? Because certificate is a file which you, as a user, do not remember. It just exists in your system, right? You would not memorize a certificate code, right? Cipher. So this is something you have, okay? And finally, biometrics. Biometrics is this something you are, okay? Which AAA authentication method allows for the use of a username defined in the router's running configuration? Okay, this is very simple. This is called local authentication or authentication against the local user database. And these users are defined with the username command. Which type of AAA message does the TechX Plus shared secret key use for encryption between the client and server? Okay, which type of AAA message does the TechX shared secret key use for encryption? Authentication messages, only authorization, all messages. Okay, I'm having a bit difficulty of reading this question. Which type of AAA message does the TechX Plus shared secret key use for encryption between the client and server? Well, I think I will approach it very simply. All messages in TechX Plus are encrypted, right? So the answer should be all messages. Which option is a limitation of TechX Plus? Does not offer multiple protocol support. In which sense? I mean, it supports many different things, right? Oh, is it about IPv4 versus IPv6? Yeah, I mean, TechX Plus definitely supports multi-protocol in terms of it can run on top of IPv4 or IPv6. It wouldn't care because it runs over TCP. Has a slower response time than Radius. I don't remember anything like that. Is only supported on Cisco routers. And this is correct option because TechX Plus is a Cisco proprietary protocol and solution.